Youth of today have a great challenge in isolation. Whenever I travel, I used to find it terrible. But today traveling has become so much quieter because everybody is wired to their gadgets. They either have something in their ears or they are playing on their phones or they are playing on their digital devices. It stops social interaction because people don't just talk to anybody. Most of communication is non-verbal. Relationships today are extremely fragile. Heartbreak, especially romantic relationships, is quite serious. They even contemplate suicide if it's a serious, the first time breakup. There necessarily has to be that word which everybody sometimes doesn't like, is commitment. Toxicity in relationships happens when the two of them don't understand each other. There is a lot of abuse which is going on, including sexual abuse and rape, which people don't talk about in our country. We are considered to be the suicide capital of the world. Suicide is a big issue when the person says, no, I'm going to kill myself. That in itself is an indicator. That's a terrible thing to say. You must take that seriously. Parents also should be aware of the fact that you cannot pressurize the person if the person does not have the ability. The person is not meant for science. Why are you forcing him to do science?
Some parents live their dreams.
Correct, yes.
Do you know why some relationships fail? One of the reasons of a poor relationship is communication. But is that all? Not at all. If you're interested to know more about relationship and the challenges that come along with it, join us in today's podcast, presenting to you IHS podcast with Father Dr. Konrad SJ. Welcome to the second episode of the Inspiring Heart Show. And today we have with us a very special guest, Father Konrad Norona, a counselor, educator, psychotherapist, founder director of the Center for Safeguarding and Human Formation. And today we are very happy, Father, that you are here with us in the show. Warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Romero. It's a great honor to be here, to be invited and to come and share some thoughts which I have, based of course on what questions you will ask me.
Father, just out of curiosity, I wanted to know, how long have you been in this field of work?
Well, I was asked to start this type of work of formation while I was in my PhD studies. And during that time, he was called the Provincial of India, but now the terminology is the President of the Conference. So the President of the Conference at that time asked me to prepare myself extra beyond what I was doing in my PhD studies to do human formation work in our country. As you know, that there are many documents which the church has on human formation, specifically with regard to consecrated men, but there are also documents which deal with consecrated women and consecrated men. So some documents are, there's a document called Vita Consecrata, then there are other documents like Pastris Dabo Vorbis, and newer and more recent documents. The various popes and the various dicasteries in the Vatican have been focusing more and more on human formation, making it more contemporary, because the whole world is moving very, very fast, and there are a lot of issues which happen because of that. And this is not just true for consecrated men and women, it's also true for the world at large. So, youth in the world, married couples in the world, older people in the world. But that is how I started off, by preparing various courses. And this has been going on since 2013. Of course, I've been working with people since I'm a qualified doctor. For the last, I think I qualified 32 years or 35 years ago, so I don't even remember I'm that old.
No, you look very young.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so, but, that's as long as it is, and that's when it started, yeah.
Primarily, you are working very closely with the youth, especially when you are working for safeguarding and human formation. I am sure you are coming in very close contact with the youth. Just wanted to know, what are the challenges that youth of today face, especially given the fast-growing world, now with the arrival of new technologies, artificial intelligence, and the media at large? What are some of the challenges that youth face today?
Surprisingly as it may sound, but the youth of today have a great challenge in isolation. And that is because of media, actually. They tend to isolate and they tend to become more alone because they are so wired to their gadgets. Now we talk about media as being essential, very true. Media as being essential, but the social contact which youth and persons of even a previous generation had in society, interacting with people and interacting with each other has reduced considerably. I'm going to say something very funny. Uh, Whenever I travel, formerly when I was traveling, when I say in my earlier days, traveling was, I used to find it terrible because people would be talking all the time, people would be shouting all the time. But today, traveling has become so much quieter because everybody is wired to their gadgets. They either have something in their ears, or they are playing on their phones, or they are playing on their digital devices. But that's also not very good, because it stops social interaction. And that is what is seen a lot. That's one of the challenges which we face. How do people not lose contact with each other and with society? Another big issue in today's world where the youth are concerned is anxiety. A whole lot of anxiety because of various causes. In our country, as we know, there's tremendous pressure from parents to perform. And with smaller families, single parent families, dysfunctional families, we don't really know what is happening inherently in a youth, in a young person. So there are a lot of anxieties. Performance, especially in exams, because the world is so competitive, especially in our country, that brings up a lot of anxieties. Now, depending on how you're looking at youth, are they teenagers or are they early 20s? In some places, they talk about early 30s. They also have got relationship problems. I'm not talking about the isolation, but relationship, boys and girls, girls and girls, friendships, relationships, romantic relationships. Because they don't have this bit about how they are interacting, and interaction is very little. Most of the interaction is through cell phones and through media. Heartbreak, especially romantic relationships, is quite serious. Where girls are concerned, it's even more serious because a lot of them, get depressed. They even contemplate suicide if it's a serious, the first time breakup. These are things which need to be talked about in various places so that people can actually help address them. And they are not difficult to address. There are support systems in place. There are persons who are available to help them talk about them. And as much as I may have said that they tend to isolate and they're alone, the youth of today like to talk about themselves, and they love to talk about themselves, and they talk as very easily as compared to, say, my generation.
Youth today, they are ready to talk about themselves, but also on the other hand, we also see that there is a communication gap. Children that we saw 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and that we see today face a lot of problem in communication, whether it is between their family members, whether it is between their partners, or in any relationship, or may it be in the places of work. Communication is one of the areas which is problematic to the youth.
So here we have to realize that at every stage of growth, and what I would say at every developmental milestone, there are different ways of communicating. If you're talking about a teenager who's just, say, out, even just around 15 or 16 years, and then becoming a little older, there's a lot of peer pressure. Peer pressure is a sense of belonging. And so if they don't belong, it means there is something about them which the group does not like, and it can create a lot of problems. Communication is not only just talking. Communication often is, I belong to a group through whatever activity we are doing together. Whether it is even gaming, there are people who are gaming all the time. That is communicating. They are playing games together, but they are in different places. So that again is a form of communication. That is my friend. I may not be gambling, but I'm doing it with my friend. Then there is communication. Let's say the person is in the workplace. They are also young people, say maybe in their 20s, late 20s, even early 30s. There the level of communication is different. It's highly competitive because they are in the workplace, and communication is usually about, work. Especially where young people is concerned, is about communicating about themselves, what is happening within themselves. That requires people who know, they have the competency to talk to such persons and to be able to elicit from those people a response. And because people don't just talk to anybody, they need people whom they can talk to. And even if schools and colleges and all have got counselors and people whom we call caregivers or helpers, the first step is usually necessarily taken by the youth, the young man or the young girl who would want to talk. Communication is not about words, because as a lot of research study says, a lot of communication, most of communication is non-verbal. It's not through words, it's through body language, it's how the person is talking, it's how the person is gesticulating, it's how the person is presenting himself, so what is unsaid. And these things are picked up. So training youth sometimes even in how to speak, how to behave, and allowing them to know that there is somebody who they can talk to if they're having difficulties is really very important. So that communicating, as I had said earlier, it will be dependent on which stage of growth they are. If they are in their late teens, I'm not talking about younger, late teens, because that's when they are really interacting with persons who are in youth groups or in spaces where they are working, or a club or a gym, that sort of thing.
When we are talking about youth, especially after teenage, there is also this crisis of unable to identify the status of relationship. Earlier we could talk about, look at any two people, boy or a girl, when they are together for some time, then we call them couple. Then later on, maybe after marriage, they are called as married people. But these days, we have so many attributes in the relationship of infatuation. Then slowly it goes on to a situationship, then whatnot. There are so many attributes of that sort. How a youth of today can identify in what status of relationship they are in?
Yeah, relationships today are very fragile. Just as we change phones and people want to change phones,
Yes.
especially where boys are concerned, they want to change girlfriends or the girls whom they are going out with. Even the language which we used to use, like dating and all, has changed.
Yes, true.
We no longer use the word girlfriend, because a girlfriend, when I was in college, when we used girlfriend, it was a girl who was a friend. But today, if we use the word girlfriend, it means someone whom I'm dating. The same thing is true. We never say boyfriend. When I was in college and when I was at my age, we used to say boyfriend. But now we don't say boyfriend, we say buddy, because boyfriend has got a different connotation. So in relationships today are extremely fragile. People are constantly looking for something which is temporary rather than something which is permanent. Look at jobs also. Jobs also, they keep on changing because it's moving up the ladder much faster so that they can get more money and advancement in career. What they are not looking for is stability. For something to be stable, there necessarily has to be that word which everybody sometimes doesn't like, is commitment. Commitment. So making a commitment is sometimes difficult. In our country, sometimes commitments are made for couples by their parents because arranged marriages. But more and more we now see people are having relationships which are live-in, supposedly love, or love marriages, or relationships based on what is called love. But if they are unable to sustain it, to remain in that commitment, then it breaks up. For that to happen, there has to be deeper level communication. There has to be a communication in which they talk about more than, which is the next restaurant or the next movie they are going to. Time should be spent in discussing deeper things. And especially if they are making a commitment like marriage, or making a commitment to be true to each other till they get married. Yes, so that is what I would say. And relationships can be of all sorts. Relationships can be of all sorts. You can go by appearance, you can go by intelligence, you can go by the fellow who has got a better job, and then you're just in a relationship. But if you want a relationship which is a happy relationship, it should be like the poet Khalil Gibran says, that there are two islands, and if there are two islands, they don't differentiate. They are two separate islands, but the water around is the water of the sea, which washes them and keeps them together. So that is the water of love, if there is a relationship which is actually a true relationship. So even if it is from a young age, so people talk about being committed to each other. If they're committed to each other, we should also remind them this commitment is for life.
True.
At least we as Catholics, we talk about it in that sense. It's not a temporary relationship. It does not involve, just falling in love and then dropping the person, that sort of thing.
When we talk about commitment in a relationship, that's a lifelong. How does the Catholic Church look at the premarital relationship? Now we have live-in relationship. How do we look at it?
Well, the Catholic Church is very clear in its stance on relationships. Relationships, especially if they are married, they have to stay on. That's why it's very difficult to get an annulment. Now, premarital relationships, where you're talking about whether mostly when we talk about it, we talk about it in sexual terms.
Yeah.
That is not accepted in the Catholic Church because we talk about it. The sacrament of matrimony talks about a person only consummating the marriage after they are married, and so therefore we talk about abstinence till such time as they are married. And it is again quite interesting, but there are a lot of people who subscribe to that and who say, yes, we will, because if that person is meant for me and I am meant for that person, for our relationship to really flourish, I can wait for some more time.
As a counselor, if it is okay to ask, as a counselor, you might have come across instances where people were in live-in relationship. How successful was that, if you have come across people?
See, there is something which is called cohabitation, which we talk about, or live-in relationships. It's just that they don't want to commit to getting married because, I have my bank account, you have your bank account, but when we get married, our bank accounts become one. That's a very important factor. But a lot of people have live in relationships and they are living together. But that's not the Catholic way of looking at things.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I was once told by one person who said, my son and his partner, a woman, they have been together, but then she herself, that woman, told me that, but in your faith tradition, you all don't have that, right? But for us, we don't really worry about that, but they are committed to each other and they have been together for so many years. So that is how it is. So it depends on which faith tradition you're looking from. And even in Christianity, Catholicism looks at it differently from Protestant ways of looking at. Protestants, for them, they have divorce. They can remarry. It's not a sacrament in the way we look at it, where we have to get annulment. Cohabitation is accepted. So we have to realize which faith tradition, as long as the person is committed to the other person. There are effects of persons who break up and all that. Yes.
Now, one of the areas where youth find it difficult is to identify what is a toxic relationship and what is toxic in a relationship. Though it might sound fancy, but it's very important, I feel, that today the youth come to know what is a toxic relationship and what is toxic in a relationship.
Yeah, toxic in a relationship and toxicity in anything is when it becomes demanding and exclusive. Now, you have your friends, I have my friends. No, suppose there's this girl and this guy who are dating each other. You have your friends and you have your friends, we have our friends. You cannot tell one fellow you should drop all your friends because now you're with me, but I'm not going to drop my friends. That sort of thing. So when this total exclusivity to the exclusion of everything else happens, that's not acceptable. And then the toxicity in marriages, as you said, or toxicity in relationships happens when the two of them don't understand each other. They don't understand that both of us are different, but we have come together and we are together, but we are both individuals in our own rights. If one person starts dominating or domineering the other person, then that starts setting in. Yeah, so then the relationship keeps getting worse and worse. And in today's world, people don't bother, in trying to even make it work, because if both partners are working, so that's the difference between cohabitation and marriage. Cohabitation, you can go your ways. There's supposedly no residual damage. Whereas in marriage, especially in the Catholic way, there is a whole lot of process which is involved if persons want to separate from each other. So we talk about separation in Catholicism. We don't talk about divorce.
One of the things that youth fail to handle today is how to handle crisis. The crisis management is not very much taught to people, and when they encounter such situations, they break down. A lot of suicides take place because of this. So how can a youth handle crisis in life?
Yeah, these things need to be talked about right from the years when children begin to understand, till the time when they don't want their parents. At a period of time, children, they want their parents because the parents provide them with many things, but at the same time they want their independence. But when you want independence, you should also realize that with independence comes a lot of demands. The demands which we have to make your choices and all that. And with choices, if a wrong choice is made, a crisis can set in. So therefore, helping children and helping parents from a very young age, when they have young children, young parents, to talk to them about parenting so that they can take that to their children as well. The children should know that in schools and even at homes and around homes, there are persons who are there who can help, whom they need to talk to, trusting persons. That is becoming difficult now because they are, as I said earlier, they are wired to their devices. But at the same time, there are a lot of apps which are available, which they can access, and chatbots which people can access now, which are available, which they can use. Technology is available in various ways, and those can also be used. But then awareness building should take place. Awareness building should take place right from the level of the time when children are beginning to think and explore. Because when you explore something which is dangerous, then you get hurt. Just as a machine can hurt you, the same even a person can hurt you. So they need to be taught about that. It is happening. It's not happening as much as it should. Formerly, family used to look after everything. But now families are small. Parents are working. Parents don't have time for their children. They're not observing as much as before. That's why.
There is also a lot of cases on mental health issues. Where I studied back in St. Aloysius, Mangalore, we have a week of awareness program on mental health issue. More and more importance is being given to this area. What are some of the mental health issues that are prevalent in youth today?
Yeah, World Mental Health Day and World Suicide Day, both of them have now, from a day, they have become a week. Because especially in schools and colleges, more in colleges, because the stresses just explode in colleges, they have begun to realize that it needs to be addressed through various ways, either through posters, through seminars, through talks, through expositions, videos, movies. The biggest issues which young people face today, as I had said earlier, is anxieties, lots of anxieties, then of which performance anxiety is the biggest anxiety. Depression. Depression is something which goes under the radar. That is commonly seen. There are a lot of persons who have been hurt very seriously. There is a lot of abuse which is going on, including sexual abuse and rape, which people don't talk about in our country because of stigma which is associated with it. It's not that it's not there in the West, but there is a little more openness over there and access to resources. Whereas in our country, stigma is so high and access to resources is not as much as it should be. Some other issues which you see is, I mentioned one of them is romantic relationships. And then when they come to college, especially when they are just out of their 12th standard and they are entering into senior college, dysfunctional families, that's where it comes out a lot. Then comparison. Not just academic comparison, socioeconomic comparison becomes very, very high when you enter into college. Where did you buy that shirt from? And I'm asking you, where did you buy that shirt
This
from?
one I bought it from Zudio, though I'm not promoting.
No. Yeah, no, but the thing is like that. So people will go for brands, and when you tell me the brand, I automatically know what is your socioeconomic strata. And if I don't belong to that socioeconomic strata, it can create a lot of issues in me, because the other person will say, oh, they don't belong to my socioeconomic strata also, so I will only mix with my own. So belongingness is a big thing, especially when they go out of, they go out of school, because school they are in uniforms. That is a good thing which schools do, to keep them in uniform so we don't create the difference. Everybody at least externally looks alike. They may be picked up by a Mercedes or they may walk home, but at least in school when they are together. So anxieties are a lot. One of the anxieties is about studies, because performance is very high. It's easier to get into, the University of Chicago than to get into one of our IITs over here. Yeah, because the competition level is so high, and University of Chicago is one of the top universities in the United States of America. So you can see how high the demands are.
And so is the suicide cases also.
Suicide
because of
cases,
entrances.
yes, we are considered to be the suicide capital of the world. The largest number of suicides in the world actually takes place in India. I forget the exact statistic about how many seconds or how many minutes there is a person who's committing suicide in our country. But we do know that the two places where the largest number of suicides actually take place at a particular time is in India. One is in Kottayam and the other is Kota in Rajasthan, where they have all these coaching classes. Because
so many of them.
So because so much of pressure and they can't face the pressure, they don't get the marks they wanted, parents are disappointed. Suicide is a big issue and for whatever reason, there is no clear reason to say because of this suicide is going to happen. A suicide is an impulsive decision which a person takes. But if they are going to commit suicide, they have already given hints earlier. So therefore, it's not been picked up. It has to be picked up by people to help the person before it is actually completed. So it's just that people don't pick up when the person says, no, I'm going to kill myself. That in itself is an indicator. It's not in fun. Because nobody would actually make a statement like that. No, I'm going to just go and stand in front of the train. That's a terrible thing to say. You must take that seriously. Yeah, so those are already indicators which sometimes people just brush off. But then that person needs to be walked to a counselor, to a doctor and asked, why did you say that?
Yeah, which people fail to do, especially in our country. Father, as a counselor and as a psychotherapist, if you have to give some suggestions to students, especially the youth, so as how to face these disappointments, that there are a lot of expectations from a family, from the micro level and the macro level in the society. What suggestions can you give to the youth in order to face this? How they can address this issue of expectations?
So if there is a demand which is made, and the person should look at what are his beliefs or the beliefs of the person who's making the demand and see whether the person can match it. To match it, they should be able to be rationally be able to dispute whether it is meant for him or it is not meant for him. I had classmates when I was studying in college, when I joined medicine, who said their parents forced them into it and they got the marks. But they didn't want to become doctors. In 6 months they left because they couldn't cope with the stress. You can get a 98 and all that in 12th standard, but then the life after that is terrible with the amount of demands, and they didn't want the demands. But daddy and mommy have their hospitals and all that, therefore we have to become. But they couldn't face the demands. So therefore, disputing the demands, and parents should be open. So it's not about the youth only.
True.
It's also about parenting. Parents also should be aware of the fact that you cannot pressurize the person if the person does not have the ability. You're bound for failure. The person is not meant for science. Why are you forcing him to do science? Because he's going to fail, no?
Some parents live their dreams.
Correct, yes. They live their dreams with their children, unfulfilled dreams. Yeah, so they want their children to do that. Or it's family inheritance, it has to go down in that way.
Aspect.
Right. Dispute, once you have, if there is an issue, if there is a crisis, the ability to look at it rationally, not emotionally, because the emotion is what triggers, to look at it rationally so that you know that you can dispute it and see whether it is meant or not meant. Another word to use disputation is to talk about making the choice. How do you make the choice? Whether the choice is for you or the choice is for somebody else. But parents and those who are pressurizing also need to come in.
Recently, we had a news in Kolkata, what happened to that doctor. Certain things are not talked about in our society, especially as you said, they are under the radar. Nobody talks about it and nobody wants to address this issue. It is a hot topic for some time, especially when it gets media attention for some time, then topic is changed. So is the case with what is happening in Manipur, then with this. And how can we promote the culture of safety, especially for girls, women, the disabled, and especially the marginalized?
It's interesting that you asked this question because, in fact, in one of our house apostolates, where some of our guys go to this Chetna Mahila Vikas Kendra, the lady who's in charge is a lawyer. So because of what happened in Kolkata, Now women have taken up, certain things which they are doing. So what her group along with some other groups are doing is every Saturday night they take a morcha at midnight, and they will go to this place somewhere in Pune, and they will have a demonstration at midnight. And what is their intention? The intention is to show that the streets should be safe for us women as well.
Okay.
Now, of course, what happened in Kolkata happened inside. The same thing was, there was that famous case in Bombay, the Shanbad case, that nurse. So that happened. But whatever it is, places should be made safe for women. For a fact that in certain parts of our country, girls just can't go out after 6 o'clock. It's very, very dangerous to go out. So women also have equal rights to move around, and their safety should not be compromised. And the governance of the judiciary should look at the safety elements also, to see that why not, they also should have safety. Trains should be safe, buses should be safe, walking on the street should be safe. We do know that after those horrible murders of girls, rapes and murders of girls in Hathras, in Badua and all that stuff, the laws on rape and the laws on child protection became much more stringent. It has got even more stringent now that IPC has changed into BNS. So the government is doing things and is looking into things for protection by creating greater penalties, including the death penalty. There was one guy recently in the news who had raped and murdered a very young child. He's already been given the death sentence. So these things are there. So the government is taking steps, and these steps are being implemented. But at the same time, awareness building should be done all over the place. And women are taking a more proactive stance. We men are on the back seat now.
This was been really very enlightening. And for the audience, all those who are watching, I am very happy to inform that Father has a lot of research papers. I think we must search. You type his name in LinkedIn and you will find a lot of research papers. And he also has a YouTube channel. And in Audible also his presence is very much prevalent. Kindly type Father Konrad Norona and you will find it. And thank you so much, Father, for spending your time here.
Thank you, Romero. Nice to chat with you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Father.